Hi folks, I want to share some information with you about category data, numeric data, and how we represent that data in a graphical form. Category data is data that's just as it sounds. It can be put into categories. So we're talking about things like your favorite color or your favorite TV show, or maybe like we were looking at in class today, the achievement level of your NCAT scores. When we use category data, we can put it into a data display or a graphical form. And when we do that, we are going to make a bar graph or a pie chart / circle graph. Those are the data displays reserved for category data. Numeric data is, again, also as it sounds. It's data that is numbers. We can put the numbers in order. They have a value. So certainly things like test scores or heights and weights of anything. So really anything we can measure, okay, certain measurements. And the data displays that we use for those, or this type of data, numeric data, are histograms. We can do number line plots, although we'd only do number line plots for a small amount of data. And sometimes we do box and whisker plots. So today we're going to focus on looking at the difference between histograms and bar graphs. Okay, a histogram and a bar graph are going to look similar to begin with. They're both going to have a quadrant like this, usually just the positive quadrants. Okay, but what's going to be different is that a histogram is going to have the scale along the bottom, and that scale is going to matter because things are going to be in order. We're going to have the lower heights and then the medium heights and then the higher heights if we're using heights. In a bar graph, though, we're not going to necessarily worry about this scale because we're going to have things like my favorite color is blue, or my favorite color is green, or my favorite color is red. And I could put those three things in any order. I could put my favorite color is red, and then green, and then blue. Okay? So on a bar graph, the scale on the bottom doesn't matter. Okay? Also in a bar graph, we can draw in some bars. Here's where I wish I could use a ruler on this. Okay, and those bars are not touching. There's space between them because they're not related to each other necessarily. Okay, I could have put that bar there and that bar there depending on what my categories were on the bottom. On a histogram, the bars are touching because the numeric range matters. So I'm going to have everything from 2 to 3. And if it's a 3, it's going to go in the next category from 3 to 4. And so those bars are touching depending on what my measurement data was, my numeric data was. Okay, so histogram, bars touching. Bar graph, bars are not touching. Also in a histogram, I can change my scale. We're just using the scale here of 1 through 10, but I could use a scale of going by 5s or a scale of going by 10s, and that would change how my bars looked because that would put more things in a bar or less things in a bar. So some different things you can do with histograms. All right, let's look at specifically how to make a histogram. The first thing you want to double check is this numeric data? Well, here we have test scores from a science class. It's numeric. It's things that were measured. I can put them into an order. And in fact, that's the first or the next thing I want to do. I want to put this data in order, and I want to do that by making a stem and leaf plot because that's going to be a nice way to put the data in order. And so remember in a stem and leaf plot, I put my stem on the left-hand side, and my stem in this case is going to be my tens place. So it looks like my lowest is 40, so I'm going to start at 40. And I have my 50s and my 60s and my 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and I even have someone in the hundreds. So I'm going to have that there. And then I'm going to start to put the data in, and I have 67, so that's a 6, and the 7 goes here in the 1 spot, and 99, and I can even cross these off as I do them so I don't forget, and there's my 100, and 87, 45, 98, 70, 88, hopefully you're doing this in your notes, 86, and hopefully you're doing it neater than I am, 75, 65, 73, 82, 94, and 93. Great, looks good. So, sort of looks good. We're going to take this then, now that it's organized by tens, and put this into a histogram. I've set up a quadrant for you here already. Okay, we're going by tens on the bottom, and I know my lowest was 40, so I just used a little on the side. And actually, I need to add some up here because we're going up to 110. Because remember, the categories are from 30 to 39. And if it's a 40, it's going to go to the right of where you see the 40. Okay, a couple of things we need to add though. We need to add some labels. So this is the scores on the bottom. Okay, the left-hand side or the y-axis for our histograms is always the frequency, which is how often things occur. And this is test scores. We need a title. Test scores. So if I'm just bounce back to my data, we had 1 in the 40s and 2 in the 60s and 3 in the 70s. So in the 40s, we had 1, so I draw my bar up. And I think we said 2 in the 60s, so from 60 to 69, and 3 in the 70s. And if we bounce back again, we had 4 in the 80s, 4 in the 90s, and 1 in the 100s. So 4 in the 80s. Notice my bars are touching, so the 80s is 80 to 89, 4 in the 90s, and 1 in the 100s. Great. Now, a couple of things we want to look at once we complete our data. We want to do some analyzing the data. And by analyzing the data, we want to describe what the histogram looks like. Looks like. Well, when we describe what it looks like, we talk about where is the center of the data. Well, if you look at this data here, it looks like we could balance this data maybe around 85 to 90 or so. Remember, these are heavier here, these are lighter. So if we wanted to put this on a teeter-totter, we could maybe say the center is around 85. Okay. We also want to find out and see which way is the data tilting in terms of, is it symmetric or is it skewed? Okay, well, symmetric means even on both sides. Skewed would mean it has a tail one way or the other. In this case, we have a tail to the left, so it's skewed to the left. We are going to work on describing this data more in class. Few vocabulary items to get down onto that blue sheet. Make sure you're drawing a picture to go with it, the representation, okay? Category data, as we said, is data that can be put into groups, okay? So for example, we're looking at favorite TV show or favorite color. Numeric data, we said, is like measurement. Ooh. Data, okay? So data must be in order. Data must be in order. You can change the scale. So these are all important things to remember about numeric data. Stem and leaf plot is just a way to organize data. And then a histogram is a data display for numeric data. All right. I hope that this video gave you some good information and a good place to start, because we're going to be practicing creating and analyzing histograms in class. Thanks for listening.